right, the topic of evaluation and assessment, you're probably going, this is going to be the boringest talk in the world, because evaluations and assessments come out usually after an event or after you're done with the semester, and it's like, okay, professor evaluation time. And your professor gets up there and they encourage you, he or she encourages you, hey, take the test, take this, evaluate me, evaluate me, evaluate me. We always see it as an afterthought. It surrounds us. Think about it, your time, your schedule, you're evaluating that every single day. Do I have enough time to fit into here? Your bank account, do I have enough money to buy the grande Starbucks, or should I buy the tall? You also have it in your car. Wait, okay, I know the gas is on 1/8 of a tank, but can I really make it to Columbus? That happened to us yesterday morning. Got in the minivan was on 1/8 of the tank, and I'm sitting there ready to pick up Tim and Chrissy, and I'm like, can we make it? That would have been a bad decision, bad evaluation, bad assessment, probably somewhere in the middle between here and Columbus. But we do that with our cars. We do that with our relationships. We assess them. Maybe not intentionally, like, what did she mean by that? He didn't wave at me today, so what was really going on there? Also, sitting in a plane yesterday, I'm very thankful that the pilots assess what's going on with the gauges, because there was a couple times that we were bouncing up and down, and the pilot's up there gets on the radio, and the lady behind me is like screaming, we're gonna die, we're gonna die. And the pilot's like, you know what, we hit some bumps, just stay in your seat, everything will be good. So the pilot sees the gauges and everything like that. So we are bombarded and surrounded by evaluation and assessment. So I want to tell you this, evaluation and assessment is who you are. Now think about that. When you evaluate and assess, you're really confirming who you are. You can't hide from that. And it's also communicating who you want to be. Because remember, perfection's a myth. So when you evaluate, you might say, yep, I messed up, I missed it, but you're also communicating who you want to be. So it's early 1950, and I'm gonna tell you a little story about evaluation and assessment in the jungle. Okay, evaluation and assessment can happen in the jungle. So it's mid-1950s, early 1950s, and it's in Disneyland. All right, so Walt Disney used to walk around Disneyland every single day with a little sweater, little hat, trying to blend in, and all he wanted to do was get in line with customers or guests and see how their experience was going. That's what he wanted to do. So this one day, he makes his way over to the Jungle Cruise, and there's a young new team member there called Dick Nunis. And Dick Nunis ended up being one of the top executives at Disney World. And if you go to Disney World, his name is on one of the windows on Main Street. So Dick Nunis is the guy running this. He sees Walt Disney come up. And Walt Disney, let me back up and give you a little preface. Walt Disney was not really good at praise. He would never tell you, you did a great job. He would tell you, that's good enough. And that was high praise for Walt Disney. So here's Walt Disney coming up to Dick Nunis. He must have seen something wrong at Disneyland that day, because he's not happy, and Dick's like, I'm really nervous. So Walt gets on the boat at Disneyland and starts to take the cruise. 4.5 minutes later, he gets off the boat, and usually, what is it? I guess the stories say that when Walt got really upset, both of his eyebrows went up. So both of his eyebrows up, he's scowled, and he makes his way right over to Dick Nunis. And Dick's probably sitting there going, great, I'm gonna get fired at the most magical place in the world. But he comes right up to him and he asks him a question. He goes, Dick, how long is this ride supposed to take? And Dick goes, well, 7.5 minutes, Walt. How long do you think it just took me? 4 minutes. And Walt looked at him and said, fix it. So Walt was evaluating his park. Now, if you go back to that Jungle Cruise ride, the lines were crazy in the 50s. In less than 2 or 3 years, they had over 1 million guests at Disneyland. That's unheard of in the 50s. So maybe what the Jungle Cruise skippers were doing was, let's get through as quickly as they can so people don't have to wait in line and they can get the ride. But Walt Disney had scripted out a 7.5 minute script. They had spent money to make these robotic animals so people could see it, and it should take 7.5 minutes. So Dick Nunis fixed it. About a month later, took about a month for Walt to come back, and Dick every day was like looking around the corner, when's the boss gonna come back? Month later, here comes Walt Disney. He gets on the first boat, rides around. So Dick Nunes is waiting there on the dock. Hey, I wonder what he's going to say. Doesn't say anything to Dick, gets on the second boat. He did that for every single boat until he rode every boat 2 or 3 times. Got off, looked at Dick Nunes, gave him a thumbs up, and walked away. And what happened there was Walt was evaluating and assessing. Dick Nunes now had to take some course corrections and fix the issue. And then Walt came back and evaluated and assessed. Now, the moral of this story is not be like Walt Disney and never say thank you and good job to somebody. The moral of this story is if you want to improve and you want to make things better for people, you have to evaluate and assess. So the question really is not if you're going to do it. The questions need to be this, and we're going to answer these this morning. Who should evaluate and assess? Why should you do it? And then I'm going to give you some reasons why people don't, what it requires, what it provides, and what it inspires, and then how you can do it. So let's just jump in. Who should evaluate? Well, let's make it very, very clear. Each of you do evaluate every day. You just don't do it intentionally. You evaluate your schedule. You evaluate relationships. You evaluate what I'm doing right now or what I'm wearing right now. We all do it, but we don't do it effectively. And the reason why everyone should evaluate and assess your own life and things that you're going through is if we all do it, just think about how much more we can change. If only I do it and the other 12 or 13 of you don't, we can't change a lot. Evaluation and assessment helps you be ready and able to change. You live in a world that changes. When I got out of college, there was no such thing as a cell phone, except for this big old bag that they put in your car. It wasn't really a cell phone. You couldn't take it with you. It plugged in, it was big and bulky, didn't really work very well, and it was in the car. Computers were not a big thing. The internet was still starting to jump up, and now fast forward to 2018, several years later, we don't need to talk about how many, but several years later, everything I did yesterday was not on the laptop, but was on my phone. That's going to happen for you, and that only happens if you evaluate and you assess. So who should do it? All of you should do it. Going back to Peter Drucker and the effective executive, he says, all of you are knowledge workers. So every organization you step into, it's your job to make the organization better. So if you don't evaluate and assess your job, then you're failing the organization. So that's who should do it. So why should we do it? Well, we should do it for these 3 reasons, I think. One is transparency. When you evaluate and you assess, you kind of open the books and say, here's where it is. And when you open the books, you're accountable to people. So when I open our budget sheet to our execs, and when I open it to our business office here at Cedarville, I'm saying I'm accountable to you. I'm not hiding a thing from you. When I ask students to do a financial tracking sheet, that's the reason. So transparency, accountability is the second one. And then the third one is stewardship. So when I assess or I evaluate, I am being transparent, I am being accountable, and I'm demonstrating stewardship, not ownership. Now, can I put a little stop mark right here and do a timeout? It is really easy to do it in business. It's really hard to do in personal life. I need to be more of an evaluator and an assessor in my personal life with my personal responsibilities than I do with my job. I think I naturally do it with my job because people expect it. But isn't my greatest responsibility is to be a husband and a father? So am I allowing transparency and allowing Danielle and Keegan and Ethan and Audrey to say, Dad, I haven't spent a lot of time with you, or asking them the question, how much time do you think that you need with me this week? Showing them that accountability about time, because if I don't teach them that, who will teach them that? And then I start this cycle of them not spending time with their family. So it's important to do that in both. So who? We should all do it. Why? Well, transparency, accountability, stewardship. Why don't people do it? One, I don't think people have a plan. Meaning you can't really evaluate if you don't have a plan, right? I also don't think people know how to do it. You say evaluation and assessment and everybody just freezes. Like, what do you mean? What do you want me to do? I also don't think people really want to get away from the status quo. When you evaluate and assess, it makes you see something that you're doing and go, how can we make it better? And if you're comfortable with the status quo or doing things the way you've always done it, you're not going to evaluate and assess. And the last one is the most dangerous, and it's ego. People don't evaluate and assess because they don't want to be shown where they're wrong. I'll raise my hand and say that's me. I don't want to be shown where I'm wrong. I want to be a perfectionist, but perfection's a myth. So why do we do it? Transparency, accountability, stewardship. There are reasons why we don't do it. So now let's get into what will it require of you. Well, it requires that you have a plan. You're intentional. It's intentionality. It also requires honesty. So if I'm going to assess how I'm doing right now, I've got to be honest and say, you know what, that shirt didn't go with that jacket very well and you should have worn some nicer shoes or whatever. Or maybe you shouldn't have told that story about Disneyland because everybody's getting tired about you talking about Walt Disney. You know, you've got to be honest with yourself. So you've got intentionality, honesty, and the last one is so important, it's teachability. So when I assess myself, I'm saying I am willing to be taught. Guess what? You're going to college not to learn. No, that's drastic. You're going to college to be taught how to learn. Because when you leave college, nobody's going to sit there and go, you know what, here's what you got to read today. It's going to be like, here's your job, make it happen. It's your job to teach yourself how to learn. Okay, so that's what's required of you. Now, what does it provide? I think evaluation provides clarity. So for me, evaluation, when I evaluate a project that I'm doing, I'm providing a path, and it might not be an easy path, but now it's a well-lit path. I think about outside my garage. We just lost the lights on our garage. So when Ryan drove me home the other night, it's pitch black in front of my garage. So there's no lights there. There's a nice path and everything, but there's no lights there. So if a neighbor or a guest comes to my home, there's a path, but it's not very well lit. What happens if they trip? What happens if the cat's out there? What happens if they fall and they hurt themselves? Well, I'm not leaving them a path that they could see. Evaluation says, let's turn the lights on so that you could see where we are. Yeah, it might be a little crooked and a little different, but it's going to be at least viewable and clear for you to see. So that's what it provides. What does it inspire? Well, if you've got, it requires teachability, intentionality, and honesty. It provides clarity. I think it inspires you to do your best. So for me, when I'm all those things about teachable, intentional, honest, now I'm willing to look at that and go, how do I actually make this better? And that becomes fun for me. You know, Walt Disney used to tell people, plus it, make things better, make things better. But if he wouldn't have walked through or rode on the Jungle Cruise, he couldn't have made it better. And because of that, he couldn't have plussed it or made it the way that he wanted it to be. So that's what it requires, what it provides, and what it actually inspires. Now the question is, you're sitting here going, okay, I've heard all these things, why I should do it, who should do it, what it requires, what it provides, what it inspires. Now how do you do it? Now it's going to be really simple. This is probably the easiest of all that we've done, but it's the hardest to do. Number one, have a plan. So, hey, there's a reason why people say, what are your goals for your life? You're setting yourself up for proper evaluation. Now think about that. I want to retire someday. I cannot wait till I'm 65 to go, I guess it's time to start saving for retirement. I'm gonna be in a lot of trouble knocking on your doors and asking for a retirement fund, GoFundMe or something. But the whole idea is you can't wait till the end to do that. You have to have a plan. And the next one, you have to take action. I think a lot of times people don't have a plan, or they overplan and they sit there going, I don't want to do anything. I'm afraid it won't work. You've got to do both. So have a plan, take action, be aware. So for me, I look at my retirement probably once a quarter. I don't look at it any more than that because all of my retirement is in a very, very high risk. So it's doing this. So sometimes it's like, man, I made some money. Other times going, we're never going to retire. I'm going to have to go drive a bus at Disney or something. I'm never going to be able to retire. But it's all about, you need to understand, you need to be aware of what's going on. And after you're aware of it, you can course correct. So a couple of years ago, there was a retirement fund that wasn't working. So what did we do? We moved it out of that retirement fund, put it someplace else. Same thing here at Cedarville. There's things we do all the time that like, that's not working at Renova. That's not working. Let's course correct. That happens because of evaluation. And when you're done, You evaluate again so that you're leaving this clear path. You're Hanseling and Greteling it and leaving a path so people can find their way to what you're doing. So evaluation and assessment really does demand and communicate who you are. So if you want people to know who you are, you better know who you are, who God created you to be. And then another thing it does, it shows that you're willing to keep working at it, striving for it, and doing it. So a couple examples of that, what we do here. Touch point analysis, you can't wait. When we decide on touch points at the beginning, like what are the touch points for a leave? Well, they're tickets, they're this, they're this, they're this, it's the music. You know, if Zach were to wait till the very end to assess all that, it's too late. But what if he were to assess throughout the process, wow, those tickets aren't having the impact that I thought they were. Oh, maybe we need better communication, course correction, see? Or, wow, we are really getting close to budget, financial tracking, maybe we need to cut back on a couple of things. Assessment. And now at the end, when it's all said and done, he could put that all on a piece of paper, hand it to the next person that's taking the job, and now that next person that's doing that has a foundation to build on. Isn't that outdoing people and showing honor? Isn't that Romans 12? I truly believe that evaluation and assessment is one of the best ways that we can serve others. You're like, wow, it's usually about assessing myself. You're assessing yourself for the betterment of others. Because we live in this, to quote Ryan and Clara, where we are better together, but we can't be better if we don't understand each other. And evaluate and assessment is part of that.